Okay, welcome to the Kerfuffle podcast with Simon Whale. Good morning, Simon.
Hello, David. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well. Today we have a very special episode. We're very excited about it, but it is a little bit bittersweet.
It
Simon,
is,
tell
absolutely.
us about it.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? I mean, people won't be surprised at all that, given that this is episode 3 and we haven't exactly found a common theme yet for what we're doing. But this one, we felt that we needed to do it. It's for the Australian fires. Clearly, a lot of people... just to be clear about that, for the fires to try and put them out.
Oh right, okay. Good.
Obviously, we've had a lot of time spent with Aussie agents. I think most of the leading UK agents spend a long time looking towards that part of the southern hemisphere to see what best practice looks like, and whether that's all the leading players over there having done their podcasts. As we said earlier, it's one of the reasons we're doing it now, or whether they've come over here to do consultancy or talk to us. You know, everyone knows and probably has their favourite Australian training guru who's done, and I think it would be wrong to kind of ignore it, given that was the effect. Especially as that country's been very good to me, aka they've let me in pretty much every time, and apart from a few bouncers in Jupiter's casino after Arik, which I was sober, mate. Anyway, it has been very good for me. But I think if we just put into context again what the stage of it is there, almost 12.35 million acres of land are burned now across Australia, which you can't really get your head around in, apart from when you realise...
Vast, isn't it?
Well, it's 13 million is the size of England. So you can't really understand that's the case there. It outranks the fires in California by over tenfold, these fires in Amazonia as well, and everything else. So, I think one of the problems is that it might not have got the people's attention. Is there has been human lives. I think it's around 25 people have sadly lost their lives, but really that's just down to the amazing efforts
of the firefighters.
And we'll finish with that when we close up. But most of those, from what I understand, are volunteer fighters as well, which is absolutely fantastic. So we're going to try and do our little bit here today. We're going to talk to some of the leading players. Everyone will know Tom Panos and Josh Phegan. We're going to talk to both of those to get their feedback on that, and also one of the, as usual, unsurprisingly, there's Aussies over here that actually don't just serve in bars. So we've got Sam here, haven't we, from Homesearch?
From Homesearch. They don't just serve in bars. They actually own a bar.
Well, you've sport now, but you sport the okay. Yeah, so we're going to talk about that, but put it into context again. It's hideous. I mean, the 25 people murdered, 2,000 homes burned, but almost 500 million animals have been done. And it does seem, when you talk to the Aussies and when you look at it there, regardless of whether you want to get into the whole climate change and whether it's causing it, this is an unprecedented, set of...
It's a true one-off, isn't it?
It is, and we need to, it's a big country, but it's not going to recover without a bit more help than nature gives it normally.
So we're going to be throwing our massive weight behind the Agents for Oz campaign.
That's it.
That we're launching today, and we're going to be raising some money to send out to Australia.
Absolutely.
In conjunction as well with Sam Hunter from Homesearch.
That's right.
The links are below the podcast. They're on our Twitter feed. They're on our Facebook page. They're on the Kerfuffle page. Please give generously.
Yeah. So anyone who's feels that they've had got great advice from our Aussie friends over there, and again, any businesses want to show their support, I've got to give a huge shout out already. Straight away, Akaboom actually rang straight in to see if they could help, and for every license they sell till the end of January, they're going to donate £50, and even better, if you mention the Kerfuffle podcast, they're going to give £100 to that there. So
that's
as
amazing.
Usual, thanks to Akaboom there, and it shows that they are rallying behind the support here.
Fantastic. Well, let's get into it.
Okay. So, hi Tom, how are you doing? You okay?
Hey Simon, how you going? Yes, look, I feel guilty because I'm nowhere near as bad as what the media has talked about, because I'm actually on holiday vacations by a beach, which is nowhere near the fires. I'm in Byron Bay. but
I did see that. It looked particularly nice. But of course, I think, as we said, not ordinarily it'd be really nice to talk to you, but it's a bit bittersweet at the moment because, of course, as you've just highlighted there, back home, the country's taking a bit of a beating at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah. Look, the most encouraging thing, Simon, is that there's only been 30 people that have actually died, but it is pretty bad because even where I am, there's no fires, but you can smell the fire. Before I left home to come on vacation, I mean, where I live and where most people live in Sydney, Melbourne, you could actually smell and see specks of fire and things that have been basically in the air. You find it very difficult to breathe because it's quite thick. So the issue, Simon, that we have is it appears to be the first, like I'm 52, this is the first major natural sort of disaster that I've seen in my time in Australia. Yeah. We have other parts of this part of the world. New Zealand gets earthquakes. Thailand had tsunamis, and these fires. And there's nothing to suggest that they're going to stop in the next month or two.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, didn't you? First and foremost, you don't want to say obviously, relatively few. It is. I think is it 24, 25 people, which is considering the scale of the actual event is a fantastic tribute to obviously the amazing work from your support services, your fire. A lot of them obviously are voluntary, which I think is fantastic. And I think you're right in saying that actually back at 2009, your Black Saturday ones, the actual death toll was much worse because people didn't tend to listen to the advice and stayed with their homes. So it looks like you've really, really understood the human dynamics of this disaster anyway, much better, haven't you?
Yeah. Simon, Aussies are good like that. In terms of following instructions, helping out, making logical decisions, not being swayed by emotion, not being stubborn. They're good like that. And you can see that what's happened is it's a very organised manner that things are happening, and that is actually buffering and diluting how bad this could have been.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, there's a lot of suffering going on, and real estate agents in Australia have, in the last week, got their act together because, Simon, real estate agents are the link that brings the community together. It's geographical. You actually, you're the epicenter of your community, right? Yeah. So a lot of real estate agents are using their influence and their leverage and their current structure of their business where they can say to the local community, hey, we got no fire here. Come into our office and drop tins of tuna, drop water, juices, toilet paper, toothpaste, toothbrushes, toys, books. Drop things to us that we can then get trucks to deliver to those that need them. And that's been happening as we speak. This week has been a big effort by real estate agents, and any support Australia can have is greatly appreciated.
I think that's fantastic to hear, Tom. I'm here with David Mintz. As you know, I'm from the supplier side of the ecosystem, but David's an agent over here, and we talk endlessly. Obviously, over here we've got a bit more of a sort of image problem with estate agents, and yet when you see the very best estate agents, they are hyper-local and they are supporting, as far as I can see, better than almost any other business, their local communities. And I think I'm not surprised. It was one of the things I was going to ask you, how you were, how the industry was rallying around, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. And look, whatever we can do from our little side, I've always said we are a country separated by a language, a common language, but we'll forgive your use of the word data, and we're going to try and kickstart, obviously, whatever we can do over here. The podcast is going to knock 10,000 Aussie dollars in, and we're getting some expressions of support as well as soon as the as soon as the rest of the podcast goes out.
Tom?
Yeah, well, Simon, look, firstly, thank you personally, because, the interactions I've had with you, it doesn't surprise me that we're having this conversation, because you are a larrikin, but you're a compassionate larrikin. So thank you to all the real estate fraternity in the UK. I mean, we've got to, you got to understand, we feel you're not brothers, but you're more like cousins. We feel close to people in the UK, and obviously the real estate agents in Australia. We operate in, there are a lot of similarities in the way that we go about our business. There are other things that are different. We don't have as much of the discount agents, but the one thing that is definitely common, as you said, the model in Australia is all about be immersed in the community, be the person that brings people together. And I think it's the same. My visits to the UK say it's basically the same. The agent that runs the community runs market share. Mm-hmm.
No doubt at all.
Tom, on your Sunday night rant when you were talking from Byron Bay, you touched very briefly on obviously the practical help that people can give to people that have suffered in the fires, but you also kind of made quite a passionate appeal regarding sort of almost mental health support that people need at these times in terms of what they're suffering and what they're going through. And one of the things that you touched on was an app. I think that one of your out there, they were starting to launch it, which looked at the struggles that agents go through. And you touched on something which I think is a very strong theme, which we don't really talk openly about here amongst agents in the UK, and I'm sure you have the same problem in Australia. We all we eat what we kill in terms of when we go to work, and that stress is there at the beginning of every month. And therefore, sometimes we can suffer really badly with sort of our ability to cope with that pressure. I think it's amazing that you're raising awareness for that.
Yeah. Look, we're in a business where you've got a gun pointing to your head on the first day of each month, and it says, list properties and sell properties, or you and your family won't be eating. And that's a big psychological burden to carry when you work, particularly if you're running the business. And what has happened is in the last 2 years, where we've seen a challenging market in a lot of Australia, it has got better since the federal election in May in 2019. So it has got better. But for 2 years, we had a very challenging market, and it became really clear that depression and anxiety began to surface. Maybe those issues were there, but financial struggles actually accelerated them and made them even deeper suffering than it was. So what's become very clear is that in other industries, whether you're in the military, whether you're working for a big corporation, whether you're in education, there is mental health resources available for people that are going through difficult periods. And this is something that is not existent in the real estate industry in Australia or New Zealand. And I'm not quite sure whether it's available in the UK either. But we clearly know that there is a subset of the population, that number appears to be around 15 to 20%, that at any particular time have got a mental health issue, be it, depression, anxiety, or anything associated with those. And the app, which is being funded by a conference called RISE, which is being held in Melbourne on April the 28th, is there to fund the app and to fund the maintenance of the app and the resources needed, with the view that it will work as a triage. It's a bridge to take people to a more face-to-face mental health support service. But I don't know what it's like in the UK, but we've had a fair few suicides of real estate agents in recent times.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not great, to be honest. I wouldn't be surprised. It's one of those other things that binds us quite closely, isn't it? High stress and almost a perception that people have to have machismo in that position because they are these great hunter salespeople, don't they? Which leads to people bottling things up quite a lot. Yes,
100% right, Simon. So that's where we're at, and we're going through. So we've got that happening with mental health. That's been exasperated now with the fires. So
Tom,
thank you so much for your...
Well, no, thanks. Yeah. With the fires, Tom, I mean, obviously the most important thing is that obviously the human dynamic, obviously the people are safe. It's obviously, I don't want to distract the importance, but clearly it is going to impact the marketplace there. Is it going to be is it a short-term effect, or is this something that's going to have to be factored into the marketplace in Australia now for some years to come?
I don't know the answer to that 100% because this is a one-off event. There's never been a precedence. But Simon, some basic facts, if we think about it. Regional areas of Australia, real estate offices that are operating there have had buildings burnt. You've got a major impact it's going to have on people's jobs, animals, the amount of animals that have been killed in this tragedy. What I can tell you is that from past experience of floods, not fires, the areas that were affected, basically real estate turnover came to a standstill. And that is a concern because it basically means real estate agents live off turnover.
Of course they do,
yeah. And, there were agents during the Brisbane floods that went out of business because if you don't turn over property 1 month, you'll get by. 2 months, you'll get by. But if you're not making any sales for 6 months and your overheads are still there, landlords want to be,
The public get obsessed about rising or falling prices, but as you said, it's the level of transactions that matter to the revenues of the agent, don't they? So, yeah. Well, look, Tom, I wanted to say thanks again. We promised you we didn't want to take too much of your time. You were incredibly generous, as you said. We only approached you 24 hours ago, and it didn't surprise me at all. You were going to say yes. So thanks again for joining us here, and we wish you all your friends, family, and obviously fellow agents best of luck and safe over the coming weeks and months.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, guys. What you're doing matters. We really appreciate it.
Cheers, Tom. Bye.
Senior Mitts.
Mr. Sam Hunter, you are live on the Kerfuffle podcast with Simon Whale and David Mintz. How you doing?
Hey guys, how are you?
Hello. Good.
We're doing a special episode today. It's a little bit bittersweet because obviously we're raising some awareness for what's going on in Australia. And I came across your fundraiser yesterday, and we want to give you an opportunity to plug that. Tell us a little bit about it.
Thank you, guys. I should have said g'day at the start of the call.
We thought it was a bit trite, to be honest. That's the sort of thing the estate agency podcast would do, and we're more real than that.
Yeah. Can I, before we get into things far more serious, can I just say that while I've enjoyed your first few episodes, I'm also a little bit upset that we've been bumped to number 3 now on the agency niche podcast in the UK. So thanks
What
for
is
doing
that
me
true?
no
We don't
favours.
even see. We're so inept. We don't even know how to look at that table.
That's just me. That's just me in my mind.
Yeah.
Nobody has the power
Okay,
of
that's
whale
good.
and mince like
No,
whale and mince.
and also you haven't got the power of our extended families, and we do mean extended families. Downloading those mothers.
Exactly right.
Good. Oh well, that's very kind of you to say anyway, even if it wasn't heartfelt. But
Sam, it's a big week for you guys at Homesearch, isn't it? I mean, you're about to monetize.
Ooh,
We are.
sexy.
Yeah, we've had some people do themselves a disservice and pay before their trial ended, which I'm eternally
mad
grateful
mothers.
for. And we were pretty happy. It was a weird, strange moment on Friday where we had our first person pay, and then soon after a couple more, and then it's been like trickled down since. And then
So
everyone's got
sorry,
about
just to
a-
get
about
my
a
head
week
around
left.
that, Sam. So did you? Sorry, was that like an honesty sort of a charging policy where you said pay what you want, or they just got the dates wrong and started paying early?
I believe they just got the dates wrong and started paying early. We had a bit of a mess up last week where we sent out our like trigger points for our emails when trials were getting near to
Yeah.
expiry were set up for the wrong dates in the code, and so everyone got an email last Friday that said your trial's about to expire, and some people read that and then read my follow up saying sorry, you got an email
It's
2
good,
weeks
isn't
ahead
it?
of time.
I tell you what it
And some
highlights.
people-
I tell you what it highlights there, doesn't it, with the old automation thing, the importance of that. If you're going to do that, it's quite important to get it right. I will mention an email company that shall remain nameless that was sending out a whole host of Valentine's, sort of based marketing on March the 4th, which was about the time that I start to remember my own Valentine's one. So yeah. So I mean, you've had a fantastic year, haven't you? From what I understand. I mean, we spoke obviously a few times last year, and your clients are raging about you. Obviously, this is the crucial point now, as David says, monetizing it. This is I'd suggest it's an exciting time for you. Stroke brown trousers time.
Yeah, it's squeaky bum time for sure. This is the litmus test. We did have a good year last year, and we were exhausted come Christmas time, and we gave ourselves a pat on the back and said, look, we've achieved a lot, but the reality is come 17th of January, if nobody pays, then we've not built something that's anywhere near what anyone said it's worth to them or to us. So, we're quietly confident that we'll be okay, but at the same time, it's still tough out there. Everyone was some people more than others happy with political results at the end of last year. But if people think that that's going to change the market or change their businesses without them pulling their fingers out and doing some work with the support of some intuitive technology as well, not just us.
Hang
but
on a
there's
minute.
others out there
Are
doing
you
good work.
telling me that the Boris bounce has not delivered? Is this first?
You wouldn't believe it, mate. Would you?
Jesus Christ, I'm
I think
stunned. You can't
You and
see
me might
this,
be the
but
only lefties in real estate, I reckon.
Sam, before you tell us about your bleeding heart lefty position, when we met at the Negotiator Awards, I asked you about something that no one really discusses in the industry. When we talk about PropTech, there's that all-important freemium model where you're giving away this beta-tested product for a year, 2 years sometimes in order to build a following. And that is a tremendously hard time for a new company who are paying developers. And you're effectively sort of trying to forward fund that until you get to the point where you can monetize it. And even when you do monetize it, there's that catch-up period, isn't there, before you break even. And I asked you how that works and how you got through it. And your response
this is the greatest ever.
was
by
the
way.
greatest ever. You said, yeah, mate, I got a pub.
Yeah, we had a bar.
That was an Australian accent, by the way,
Yeah.
listeners. If anyone, or South African, I'm not sure.
That was all
he
right.
bounces.
It was all
okay.
right.
As far as an accent goes from an English person, that was pretty good.
Thank
Okay,
you.
good.
I watched a lot of Neighbours growing up. Loads.
That's it. Somebody
Well,
has
literally, not the show.
Less about my criminal record, the better.
Yeah, he's really into property.
So Sam, this bar that you guys run.
Come on, this is
Come on, tell
spill
us
the
about
dirt.
it.
And why didn't I
Well,
think
that
of
leads
it?
us. That probably is a really nice segue into what we're doing on the 25th for the bushfire relief back home. So we are in Canary Wharf. It is not a cheap area to have offices. We're fortunate that Giles and his brother have a couple of other businesses who've been based here for a little while. And rather than leech their profits to fund our little startup, we got a little bit creative. The boys actually used to have an ice rink in Canary Wharf as well, until Tower Hamlets Council made it ridiculously expensive to build ice rinks. So they were like, well, we may as well just build a bar and use that. So in the summer, it's called the Grandstand Bar, and it's got big screens, and we play cricket and tennis. And if Canary Wharf Group allowed us to play the football, we would have had the World Cup on as well. And at the moment, it is a ski chalet with a big screen set up where you just have beautiful photos of the Alps and everything like that.
It's a good job
And-
this isn't a vodcast, because I'm tweaking things at the moment. I mean, that is it is being filmed. Sorry, just to take that back. So okay, wow, what innovation and having fun and business all together. Who could have ever believed it? That's amazing.
And bankers like to drink beer, so they've been big supporters of us, even though they haven't known they have been. So
It's good
that's
to take
what's kept us
good to
going.
take a bit of money from them at last.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just
Quantitative
enough,
easing.
you know?
I'm still bitter about it, but I'll get over it.
So Sam, coming back to the 25th, we have
thank you.
spoken to another one of your fellow countrymen this morning. A guy, I don't know if you've heard of him, a guy called Tom Panos.
Well, they all know each other, don't they?
Do they?
Senor Panos.
Yeah, Mr. Panos himself. And we may even be speaking to another one later on after you. But you are the all-important pitch here, because you've just launched your campaign on Just Giving. We're going to be posting the link. And you're trying to raise £10,000, aren't you, to send back home? We're going to be encouraging all our listeners to pitch in, all those suppliers and all those agents, and see what we could do. We're just letting you know we're hijacking your appeal.
We are absolutely doing it. So
Thank you.
We spoke to Tom
And
before, and I think you're doing it for the Red Cross. I think we've said we're going to talk to a couple of those just to make sure they haven't got their own charities that they wanted to do, but otherwise we'll do it. And we're going to kick off with 10,000 Aussie dollars from the podcast itself anyway. So hopefully we can put that towards yours and get the ball rolling with some of the other suppliers and everything to get attention. And David fantastically came up with the name Agents for Oz, which I couldn't do, so we're going to try and. I think the nice thing isn't it? Is look, to be honest, we have taken a lot from Oz over the years. Most of the reasons that any of us are doing these podcasts is because in the early days we were listening to, Mr. McGrath and Troy and Tom and Josh and everyone there.
Alexander Phillips.
Yeah,
everybody.
just endless, isn't it? And I mean,
There's a massive affinity anyway between the English and the Australians culturally.
Absolutely.
And when it comes to, I always say this, when you look at a state agency and you want to see where it might be in England in, say, 6 months or a year's time, you only have to look at what they're doing today in Australia. And it's absolutely no coincidence
It's just
that
best practice. Yeah.
the two greatest sort of estate agency trainers, Josh Phegan and Tom Panos, the agents have taken to them so well here in this country is because they're talking a brand of Aussie bravado, but also optimism that English estate agency so badly needed.
And by the way, and sometimes I just don't want to even if they're having a good time, don't want to get across for appearing to be slightly arrogant, which is another downside, isn't it? There, I mean, I think you're spot on. You'll be obviously we spend a lot of time. Josh Phegan and Peter Knight do what's called the Blue Sky Conference, where half a dozen Aussies get together with half a dozen of the best UK agents in different locations and share their experiences there. And the mutual respect is obviously once there's all the normal joshing out of the way, the respect, obviously you can't help but just admire the Aussie prowess in the best marketing, which obviously comes from having some of the highest fees in the world. But then over time you start to see the Aussies just start to realise just how much the English agents are doing in terms of volumes, what they do in terms of referrals, and that cross-shedding of ideas. It really does become that. I think I absolutely love Josh, I love Peter Knight, everything else there, but the agents that go to these events say that they get as much from sharing those ideas with the other agents just over a coffee or a pint is one of the key reasons. And it doesn't take too long, does it? Once you get past terminology to start thinking that's how it would fit into this particular marketplace from the other one.
That's the one thing I noticed when I first got here was just how open UK, particularly independent agents, are at sharing what's working. Like we're all in countless Facebook groups where people jump on every day and they talk about their successes and their challenges. And I'll agree with everything you just said about Tom, Josh, what Peter's doing here is fantastic, and how some of that stuff is starting to filter through into day-to-day agency here in the UK. But the fact that agents here are sharing what's working that doesn't happen as much back home. And that's one thing I think a lot of Aussie agents can learn from the UK, is that you don't just have to treat your competitors like your enemies. Yes, they can be your rivals, but rivals are there to get the best out of each other. And if you're sharing what works, chances are every appointment that you're going to go in, you're not going to be facing someone who assumes that you're a dickhead. And that will help you get a higher fee, regardless of if you're going up against someone else who's got good competition. And the better everybody is, the better it is for the industry, the more everyone will be able to charge. And that's the mentality that, we don't try and sell home search. We try and make agents better. That's how we work here. And it seems to be working for us.
I was going to touch on that. You're not just one of these prop tech suppliers that is, dare I say, is the majority of them coming out there tend to be in their ivory towers. They tend to have a good technical solution, but they don't really have any understanding for how to make that work in the real world. Yet you've gone straight in with a lot of thought leadership, really getting under the skin of the agents yourselves, haven't you, to make that side of things work.
You can only talk about what you know, I think, and I'm not technical. My role and what I've been able to achieve here at Home Search is to apply technology into context that I understand.
And that's why I'm unemployed, by the way.
And I still don't know if I'm full of self-doubt about what I know.
Great, I like that.
Still.
Self-deprecate, always self-deprecate. We love that.
Always. But what changes every day, and there's something new that comes along, and if you're egotistical enough to think you know everything, then you'll miss the next best thing. And so I just decided one day that I'd sack up and put my face in a video or write a blog and about what I believe to be true and see if it worked. And so far, people seem to be liking what I'm putting out there, and I'll keep it up. But again, I'm going to just try and educate myself as much as I can.
No, I think you're absolutely on the right track, mate. I mean, genuinely, I'll tell you straight. I think it's really laudable. You're getting attention in what is a very congested space.
And do you have a unique deal that you wish to offer Kerfuffle members from Home Search?
We don't, is my answer.
Sod off, and we're going to delete the rest of this.
Do you get the guys from Sprift on the phone? Let's see what they got to offer.
We should try and bid off
Let's get that on there now.
We should get like a charity event going between all the prop tech suppliers.
Oh, I love that. We were already talking about this. Yeah, that's our...
Sam, I'm going to bring it back down to sort of something more serious just as we say goodbye to you. Tom, I don't know if you caught his rant on Sunday night, but one of the things he was talking about was just not just the practical help that people can give the people that are struck by this tragedy in Australia, but he was also talking about the sort of mental health support and just checking in on people. And then he sort of segued into something that we don't talk about in the industry that much, but it's something that you're very keen on. I know that you always do your sort of mental health Mondays, but there is this propensity within the sort of estate agency industry as a whole, and I think it's the way that we operate. I think it's the pressure we're under. I think it's sometimes the fact that we don't earn anything until a deal completes, and there's an awful lot of work that has to go into it before you get to that stage. And Tom identified that there's definite sort of strains and stresses that estate agents are under on a daily basis. We don't talk about it more often. We need to. We need to start some initiatives to help supporting them. But you're already leading the way with that, aren't you?
Again, I wouldn't say that I'm leading the way. I'm just talking about my own experiences. When I was a kid, I had anxiety going to school every morning. Like, I didn't want to get on the bus. And then that I got over that, thankfully. But then the next step was that translated into I didn't want to go traveling because I freak out about what would happen. My brain goes worst case. And real estate, weirdly, having, I guess, educated myself as a young person on how you can manage these. I don't think you ever really get over it. You just learn to manage it. And that, when I got into real estate, I used to hate cold calling, but I did it anyway because I was told to, and I learned that discipline. And real estate sort of worked the reverse for me. It actually helped me get over a lot of my anxieties and a lot of the things that were rolling around in my head, because it was always there was always another hump to get over and another hump to get over.
Yeah.
And I remember, so I was being paid a wage for the first couple of years when I was in property, and when I was a PA, and then I was a junior agent and everything like that. And then I started to do all right, and I would be making a lot more money if I was commission only. And I held back on that for 6 months because I had this pit of anxiety in my stomach about not knowing where my next feed was going to come from. Am I going to get paid in 2 months if it's a good auction? Am I going to get paid in 6 months if something goes wrong? And then I just started to read more and more about, focusing on what you can control, understanding that most of what you do in life is a process, regardless of if it's a state agency, if you're asking a girl out, if you want to get fit, if you want to invest some money or whatever it is. And so
that's all top 5 of my goals for this week.
Yeah, there you go. So I just want to talk about that. I feel like I probably wasn't the only person that was going through those anxieties and those thoughts. And in an industry where you don't know when you're going to get paid next, particularly if you're a business owner, I think business owners don't get enough support because they're expected to support the people underneath them. Then
True.
Who's there to help them?
Yeah.
But also, if you're working in a larger agency and you go into your induction in the UK, or certainly as well in Australia, nobody ever gives you any tips on how to manage the stress of this job. Whether it's someone not ringing you back after they've made an offer, or a seller not ringing you back after you're waiting for them to accept something, or whether it's you've got a barren patch of 6 weeks without an instruction, how you can actually manage your own energy or your own thoughts. Because if you're anything like me, and I don't think I'm completely like everybody else, and hopefully people don't have the same sort of cycles in their mind as I do, but thoughts just get stronger when they get stuck in your head. And so if you haven't got an instruction, or you haven't made a sale in 4 weeks and 6 weeks, suddenly your brain starts telling you might never make one again, and maybe I need to be going and looking at recruitment, or I need to be going and doing something else. Whereas if you're just focusing on those day-to-day activities and that process that you can control, it calms all of that other stuff, and it gives you that energy to go back and to do all those things that actually matter, that hopefully mean you won't go 4 weeks without a result ever again.
Yeah,
and then
it's great coping strategies, isn't it?
It's never spoken about, and so if I can do my part, it helps me, and hopefully it helps some other people out there. And it
certainly does. No, it's great. We need to do more of it. Sam, thank you very much for your time.
Cheers, Sam.
We're going to be plugging your fundraiser. You're also selling tickets for the 25th, aren't you? For the bar.
Tickets for the 25th. Yep. Yeah. So we can only have 350 people there. So it's a tenner to come along, and that goes to the Red Cross. If you can't make it, there's the donation link, and then we'll be doing auctions and raffle prizes and everything like that on the day to make it a little bit of fun. And then the good thing about owning a bar is we can give as much money as we possibly can that we raise behind the bar to top everything off as well.
And Tom, how do we find the link for people to donate?
I've got it.
There's a Facebook page. Mincy's got everything that you need as well if you guys want to post that anyway. But you'll see me all over social media giving it a plug over the next 2.5 weeks as well.
Great.
Sam, thank you very, very much.
Thanks, guys. Very grateful for that.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Kerfuffle here. This is Josh.
Hey, Josh, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing very well. How are we doing?
You good? You finished your run?
Yeah, I've done my 10K this morning, and we are ready to rock and roll.
You're a star. Thank you very much for joining us on this. It's absolutely fantastic to have you here. As we obviously got to say, it's probably it's not the greatest of moments, is it? Because obviously the reason we wanted to have a quick chat with you, and thanks again for giving up your time, is we just wanted to get a bit of a human perspective from your point of view about obviously the fires that are raging over there at the moment. We see all these horrible images, but I don't think we really understand the human dynamic of it without really talking to people like your good self.
Yeah, it's certainly not the conditions that I would have expected to get onto the Kerfuffle podcast. No. But I can certainly tell you that the impacts in Australia are quite severe. The interesting conversation is about what's happening and what the future looks like. One of the big things is obviously these bushfires have been going on for quite some time. This has sort of been since September last year. And what's happened over a period of time is that, as it gets hotter in the summer conditions over here, that then combined with a lot of wind and some unseasonal amounts of just not having any rain, and the drought that's been impacting the country has really exemplified bushfire season, and it's got very, very significant. The actual total numbers that I was reading in the Australian Financial Review today, in New South Wales alone, they're saying close to 2,240 homes have either been damaged or destroyed completely during the course of the bushfire season. Close to 6.3 million hectares have actually been burnt out across the country. And unfortunately, 25 people have lost their lives so far at the most recent count.
And we were just saying on the intro here, Josh, when you hear those sort of weird stats like 13 million hectares, it doesn't make sense until somebody said that was, like that's the size of England. And, it brings it home. I mean, one of the things, that you can't get your head around the scale of it. And one of the joys, but also first world problems of anyone who's lucky enough to visit Australia is when you fly over from one side to the other to truly understand that, you're talking about a continent there, aren't you, rather than just our little island. And when you see those fire dots all over the place and then coagulate together as well around such major conurbations, it's and you see the people on the beach, it's truly terrifying, isn't it? I think, did you mention one of your clients had been closely affected by it?
Yeah, so one of the really big things that on the weekend we saw probably the most significant 43 degrees Celsius sort of temperatures across most of the eastern coast of Australia, and a lot of it is some of our most beautiful beaches, regional areas, regional communities which thrive on tourism and the hospitality side, particularly over the summer months, have been impacted, in a massive way. One of my clients on the 1st of December, I sent him a text message and said, "Mate, are you going to be okay with the fires?" And he said, "Yeah, we're going to be fine." And at that side, it was on the other side of their town, and they evacuated twice. And on their third evacuation, they woke up at 5 a.m. in the morning, and his wife turned to him and said, "Honey, I think we should go." And they left. And at about 6:37 a.m. that morning, their house was destroyed.
Wow.
The speed at which these fires have been travelling, not only based on wind, but also fires joining up to each other, has absolutely devastated so many communities, particularly any of the major communities that, from anything from wood chip production to, people that are in a position that there's, great holiday destinations. All of those sorts of locations have had significant amounts of pressure. And, you don't end up with a couple of thousand people on the beaches because of poor planning. You end up with a couple of thousand people on the beaches because of the speed of which these fires have actually gone about. And when that particular client who lost his house has said to me that the bizarre thing about it is that people were fire locked, that on one side was fire and the only other side was ocean. And so effectively in his town, people were driving around for 24, 36-hour period, just not being able to go anywhere or get out. And, stores are closed, electricity's gone, mobile phone connections gone, internet connections gone. There's no power to be able to go and charge mobile phones. And then the worst part is that they're not knowing what's actually happened to loved ones. Yeah. So, it's been a very significant impactor. We've had a very small amount of rain. We've had about, in most areas, anywhere between 2 to 5 millimetres. We need about 110 millimetres of rain. They're predicting now that these fires will continue until most likely middle of March. There's no rain pretty much on the forecast, and so it's a continual thing.
And we saw you said just that little bit of rain, wonderful scenes of the firefighters kind of just dancing. For them, those guys, it's just it just must be all-consuming, isn't it?
Oh, the actual, the alerts. I've got a number of alerts set up just for, clients that I work with, particularly in these areas that are affected. And, every 15 to 16 minutes, you're getting another alert coming through saying fire front's advanced. It's now been upgraded. Now it's been downgraded. Now it's been upgraded. And the amount of changes that were just happening, it was absolutely horrific on its way through.
I believe your friend and client, obviously, met Richard Luton of Luton Properties when we went on your Blue Sky, and he's getting it particularly tough, isn't it, around Canberra, where, from what I understand, the air quality is just shocking.
Yeah, so if you go basically between Sydney and Melbourne and go right down the coast of New South Wales and Victoria, anywhere that's coastal, right the way back into inland into Canberra, pretty much most of that would be significantly fire affected. We did a tour maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, and there were parts, but certainly the actual air quality is really poor. But there's a number of things that people don't think about. Although it's been very significant, the fire fronts, this Friday is set to be one of the most dangerous days again, given the temperatures and things that are going on. The hardest part too is for these communities is that you can imagine what this does to confidence. Tourism towns that would swell by 20, 30, 40,000 people extra have lost those 20, 30, 40,000 people as they've moved. These businesses are now got no income in their premium or peak periods. I've got agents who have got properties that are going to market via the auction system that they're launching now. There's no buyer activity. There's risk of insurance premiums. Solicitors are suggesting don't proceed with anything that's in a fire-affected area.
So it's just grinding to a halt.
And we've got a number of clients who have also got, some really bizarre and awful situations happening. For example, landlords who have had their own personal house destroyed, but yet their investment property is still standing. And so they are homeless, but they've got someone else who's living in their investment property.
Yeah, you just don't think about it, do you? That's incredible.
We've got investment properties that have been destroyed, and obviously there's lucky enough that the tenants have been able to get out. Then we've got properties that are due for completion, which have also been destroyed by fire, which can't be completed, which puts massive pressures on real estate agency cash flow, and also to just, competency. I've got one client who's got 21 people in his sales team, and he said, well, how do we make a phone call? Because most of the people that we're calling have either lost a house or lost a loved one, and there's just no confidence sitting inside of those markets. And so, it's a horrible thing. There's a number of phases that are going on. One is actually keeping safe, given the conditions are continuing. The second thing is that then starting to turn the focus into being able to support these communities and getting people back up and operating. Then the third component is then what actually happens post, which is actually about, helping people to get back up on the ground, particularly in life and in business. And I say that it's easy, to say, you're very lucky you're living, you didn't lose anything, in terms of your life, you just lost some possessions. But they say that the traumatic and the stress associated with losing your entire life possessions is pretty fascinating. The actual fires, if you think about it, are burning in Northern Territory, South Australia, New South Wales, Victoria, and the southern tip of Queensland, and wiped out close to 30, if not 40% of Kangaroo Island over in South Australia, where I normally go for my health retreat. And the speed and the amount of wildlife that's been impacted has just been mind-boggling. You just couldn't even remotely see that.
It's that billion animals, isn't it, that just jumps out. You hear the human aspect, and it's terrible with all those thousands of homes and the 25 dead and everything else, but then that just sheer obliteration of the ecosystem with 500 million animals.
And it's even more than that. Like you think, okay, fine, but it's not, because like even over at Kangaroo Island, Dad was only telling me a story about a guy who said, he's got a couple of thousand head of sheep. He said the worst part is that, although their wool hasn't burnt, all of their underneath the wool is burnt. And so these animals are so affected, they actually have to be euthanized. There's thousands of them, in those communities, particularly that rely on agriculture as being a major part. So we, as a country, have certainly got a very significant crisis on. We're trying to provide as much support to any of our affected clients as much as possible. A number of our clients are raising as much money as they can, to help with our rural fire service and wires and all those that look after the, all the animals and koalas and all that sort of stuff, and repatriation, and then also too helping with emergency supplies. Really simple things, from water right the way through to different hygiene products, just to be able to help people who have lost absolutely everything. My client was lucky in that he managed to escape with a caravan, and he's been living out the back of his office in that caravan for the last 5 or 6 days, borrowed a set of shorts and and a T-shirt from a mate so that he's got a second pair, and that's everything. And he said the worst thing is that even if you've got access to cash, you actually don't have access to any stores because nothing's open, and you can't get access to any stores because you can't get around the fires. And so normally a trip to Canberra that would take about an hour and 20 minutes is taking about 9 hours at the moment by car. So,
and I think you've just hit on it there, Josh, haven't you? I mean, clearly you're one of the richest nations in the world, but with an impact of this nature, nothing can prepare you for the shock of it, or indeed the immediate resources, because just having cash sometimes isn't enough if the stores aren't there to be able to facilitate it, is it? It's a really interesting and horrific kind of thing, angle from it.
This is life-altering for so many people, and like in all things, it's a conversation about how you rebuild and what that looks like. We're not yet at that point. We're still very much in danger in a lot of the regional communities that we work in, and I think that the hardest part for a lot of these regional communities will be, most importantly, not only the loss of buildings and obviously significantly the loss of life, but the loss of financial income for the next 6 to 8 months whilst they try to work out what's going on. The income production around that is very significant. In addition to that, the other big driver is then to think about what impact it actually has on the property market. What a lot of people don't realise, we were over in Christchurch. I was actually there for one of the earthquakes when those events happened only a few years back. And what a lot of people didn't realise is that what actually happens when you take, in Christchurch, I don't know the numbers, a couple of thousand, but certainly in Australia, we're talking at least 1,500 properties that have been completely destroyed. That when you take 1,500 homes out of the marketplace and have 1,500 people that are now homeless, you can imagine what that actually does do to rent prices, which introduces investors, which off the back of that, and what actually happened in Christchurch, which is you only learn this by watching later on down the track, is that property prices actually went up close to 40% in the following 3 years post the actual earthquake. And then that drove significant price points, particularly even in Auckland, which got an average sale price well above $1 million. I think it was about 650 or 700,000 prior to that. And a lot of these things, like the government in Australia, I think have committed something close to something like $2 billion in the first phase of rebuilding.
Yeah.
And you now see that, even Elton John, I think, was close to $1 million was put in, Kylie Minogue, all of those types of people, because this is like every single bit of support that people can give is significantly helping to ease some of the pressure and the burden that we're going through here in our country, without a doubt.
Well, on that note, Josh, we launched this morning our Agents for Oz campaign. As you know, the estate agency industry here in the UK has a massive affinity to everything that happens in Australia. And a lot of them have benefited from your expertise and your guidance, and they all want to try and give a little bit back. So we're working together with some of the agents here in the UK to raise as much as we can, and we'll keep plugging that because, as you say, rebuilding is going to take a long time. So we'll keep doing that over the next 6 months and see how much we can get over to you guys.
Yeah, it's amazing, and certainly on behalf of our industry and on behalf of all the Australians that we get to represent, it's greatly appreciated. They say that one of the best things that you can do is book a holiday to come out, particularly in 6 months once we start the rebuild process, because tourism is absolutely the most essential part of all of those communities, for their survival. So, hopefully we get a chance to rebuild and hopefully, again, we can thrive.
Well, I'm seeing you in March on that subject, aren't I, Josh, for a very special event, which we should probably keep separate from this podcast.
That's true. Yes, that is definitely true. I'm just hoping that our planes will be able to take off by that point, because at this point we've got a few smoke issues. But
yeah, of course.
Certainly looking forward to catching up.
Mate, I couldn't thank you enough. Obviously, again, we just came out of the blue with a classic Simon Whale last attention to detail. You always give it your time generously, and it's really, really kind of you. We wish you and obviously your family and all the agents over there and everyone just the very best, and I hope you get through it in the quickest possible time.
Yeah, thanks so much, and thanks so much for everything that you're doing at a kerfuffle level and a podcast level to help us here in Australia.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks, Josh. Well, thanks to Josh Phegan. That's amazing to hear him and Tom at such short notice. They've really pitched in to help out today. And it's some fascinating insights into actually what's happening on the ground over there and how you can help as agents in the industry and as suppliers as well. So spread the word. The links again are on the Kerfuffle link on their website, on Twitter, on Facebook. And I will hand over to Simon to say goodbye.
Thank you, David. Yeah. Well, everyone, I think you agree. We've heard some of the very best from agency in Oz tonight. And yes, they still can't pronounce auctions or data right, but many of you have heard and learnt from these guys, either from coming over to events or listening to their podcasts, reading their books. So, if ever there's a chance for you guys to show your appreciation, it's now. And I know look, me more than anyone, I'm always sitting here for charity events, but I think this is an extra special one for us to show our affection for them. What better cause can you choose to donate really in this most miserable of Januaries? A lot of you are doing things like dry January. Clearly my own personal religious beliefs don't allow for that. But I will still be making a commensurate donation, as we mentioned earlier, from the Kerfuffle podcast for me and David, to get the ball rolling with a donation of 10,000 Aussie dollars, and just hoping that the exchange rate is good at the moment.
Strong.
Is it good?
Boris strong.
It's a Boris bounce.
It's
great.
Boris strong.
So, and I think unless they're different, we're gonna team up with the guys at Homesearch on this. And just to be clear, this isn't a kerfuffle thing. This is simply a mark of respect for all of those people over there, especially those incredibly brave firefighters. As I said earlier, I think it's over 60,000 of them volunteering, risking life and limb for their communities. And I don't mean they're all volunteering. By all accounts, they're having to be forced to get some rest as they want to just stay out there and do all the possible hours they can. So I can't possibly imagine what that's like. So once again, just want to say thanks to Josh and Tom for being as generous with their time. Sam, obviously, over here. And of course, it's no surprise to any of us that, or the listeners, that you're doing all you possibly can do to help it. So best wish to all the Aussies. I think finally, you just want to say is that we all get caught up fighting about the cricket ashes and sort of what this sort of disaster shows you really is that, don't for 1 minute really matter in the scope of things when you're faced with something like this, where the real ashes are obviously the daily tragedy story. So please give what you can do, and obviously we're staying, guys, with these to see how it proceeds over the coming months, and best thoughts with them. Cheers all.
Okay. Thanks, Simon. Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks all.
Everyone's kerfuffling.